Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Roberts. Thanks for tuning in to the local news read from AOC Community Media. You were listening to a playlist from Dig CC Mixter, if you were hearing the tunes before. That's Dig CC Mixter. That's where I find all my attribution licensed music. If you're not familiar with Creative Commons and you're a creator of things, I'd highly recommend you check it out. Thanks again for tuning in. It's a public service of AOC Community Media in partnership with The Advocate, who runs The Advocate Acadiana edition, as well as Baton Rouge, and also they're in partnership with NOLA.com and thetimes.com. You can find, the Times Picayune, and you can find them at theadvocate.com or NOLA.com. And again, if you can, you should go over to that website and support local journalists as they are doing their part to keep us informed through this and other times, and keep government transparent and keep the people in the know so they can make good decisions and be good civil citizens. All right, so let's just start off. Our first headline today is Louisiana coronavirus stay-at-home order may well have to be extended, John Bell Edwards said. This is written by Emma Deischer, a staff writer. And it is very possible that the stay-at-home order for Louisiana will be extended past April 13th as the number of known coronavirus cases and deaths continues to increase. In a joint press conference between Governor John Bell Edwards and New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, Edwards said the current order may well have to be extended. As you know, my stay-at-home order is scheduled to end on April 13th, Edwards says. I do want people to know that based on facts on the ground as we get close to the date, we will determine whether to extend that date. Right now, I can tell you it may well have to be extended beyond April 13th. All Louisiana residents have been asked to stay home until April 13th, except for the essential trips, including grocery shopping. As of Sunday, there were 3,540 known coronavirus cases in Louisiana, and there have been 151 known coronavirus-related deaths. Louisiana is the second in the country for per capita deaths and the third in the country for per capita cases. There was a comparatively smaller increase in case numbers on Sunday, but Edwards said that's partially based on a smaller number of tests. You may be feeling a little bit better today because the new cases in the last 24 hours are smaller than previous 24 hours, Edwards said. Understand, there were fewer tests that were administered as well, so nobody should rest too easy, although I am personally anxious to see real evidence that we are flattening the curve. Cantrell said Louisiana is living in serious times and definitely a crisis, and citizens need law and order. The number of cases in the city of New Orleans are growing, Cantrell said. We do not know where the curve is, therefore, at this time, we need you to stay at home. We need you to only come out seeking the essentials you need on a daily basis. When asked about citizens who are ignoring the stay-at-home order, Edwards called it selfish. We need to be good neighbors right now, Edwards said. Being good neighbors means you're not going to have contact. To go out and continue to live as if everything is normal really is a type of selfishness right now, and we're better than that. The New Orleans Police Department also said it issued a summons to the leader of the second line band and could arrest more people as the investigation continues. In New Orleans, Cantrell said police will enforce the mandates as necessary. We can do this, Cantrell said. We know that we're going to get through this, but how we get through it depends on how we respond to the mandates right now. And if you have questions about coronavirus, you can email the newsroom at online@theadvocate.com. Our next story coming up this morning, a Lafayette mom works with NASA engineer to develop wearable tech to fight coronavirus spread, by Megan Wyatt, staff writer. What happens when an unexpected mother and a rocket scientist team up against a pandemic? You end up with an innovative product that could slow the spread of contagious diseases such as the new coronavirus. Timing is so critical, said Christina Barbier. We want to get this out to market right away. The Lafayette mom and fashion designer behind Face Touch Alert has been racing to finish prototypes and begin production of the wearable technology that alerts users when they touch their faces. Barbier hasn't just been racing against COVID-19 as it continues to spread across Louisiana and the United States. She's also been racing against the different kind of deadline, the arrival of her second child. I own 2 businesses, I have a 5-year-old, and I'm pregnant, Barbier said during the March phone interview. And I'm crazy because I can't stop, won't accept no for an answer kind of person. Barbier is a fashion designer and a business owner by trade. She owns Maven's Women's Wear and Daylily in River Ranch. She also operated Maven's Menswear, which had a 7-year run before closing last year. She had her second child, Goldie Louise, last week. Something happens to you when you have a baby, Barbier said. It makes you want to just take on the world. You want to be the best version of yourself for your kid. It's fascinating. Your children motivate you to levels you never thought you could reach. In the days before having her baby, Barbier worked around the clock to finish up the website, social media pages, and marketing plan for Face Touch Alert. Now, a team of engineers is finishing up the first version of Face Touch Alert, which Barbier hopes will be affordable and accessible to people from all walks of life. Our product doesn't need electricity. Our product doesn't need a smartphone. Our product doesn't need charging cables, Barbier said. Anyone in the country or even the world can simply put this on and it will alert you when you put your hands to your face. There's nothing else like it. Dave Borski, an electrical engineer based in San Antonio, Texas, is developing the technology behind the product. Borski's previous work experiences include partnering with NASA to calibrate equipment for the International Space Station. Now he's focused on bringing Barbier's concept to life. I thought it was a fantastic idea, Borski said. I think we really have something that's going to have a long-term impact on health and safety, not just during the immediate threat we're facing, but in any industry where you don't want people touching their faces. There's an emerging market for this. Borski and Barbier envisioned Face Touch Alert becoming a useful tool for employers. The silicone products would gently alert users through vibration or sound when their hands are approaching their faces. It could be useful not just for those in healthcare and food service industries, but also for those who work with chemicals that can burn skin. We're pushing for it to be the most high-tech, low-tech piece of technology out there, Barbier said. We're trying to bring it to market for $29, but the price point will depend on the demand. The wearable technology uses different types calibrated sensors that work together to determine movement and proximity. It's not so different from a pedometer tracking steps or a wireless controller communicating with a video game console. We're developing something that's very accurate and low-tech in terms of not having a high price like Apple products, but something that's smart enough to where it's going to be reliable, Borsky said. The first version of the product will include 2 bracelets and a necklace or pendant. FaceTouch Alert's future products could include alternative wearable options such as rings and clips for earbuds and glasses. Barbier has been hyper aware of how easily germs pass from hands to the body through the eyes, nose, and mouth after her mother-in-law, who works as a nurse, mentioned it to her a few years ago. During the final weeks of her pregnancy, Barbier became even more aware of the danger of touching her face as COVID-19 cases were confirmed in Louisiana and later in Lafayette. She wondered why no one had created a tool to alert people of habitual behavior like face touching. Barbier pitched the idea for her Face Touch Alert to friends during a play date a few weeks ago, and her friends connected her with Borsky. They immediately got to work on the product. We believe in changed behavior. We believe in human beings, Barbier said. This is birthed out of love and not out of monetization. We have families and companies and other jobs. The reason we bonded and put so much of ourselves into this is because we believed we had the ability to create something that could change things, not just during the coronavirus, but in people's day-to-day lives. FaceTouch Alert won't be available for another 2 or 3 months more, but Barbier and Borsky are hoping to gauge interest before beginning production. Those interested in learning more can visit ftalert.com. Even though their product was conceptualized because of a pandemic, Barbier and Borsky hope FaceTouch Alert will have an impact even after the world recovers from COVID-19. Perhaps it will be one of many innovations to come from the crisis. I'm very optimistic about our country that has innovated over the years through wars and other things, Borsky said. Although this pandemic has caused some unfortunate casualties, I think it will also drive some net positives in a lot of ways. I think we'll see a lot of innovation, and I think we come out of this better than we were before. Our next story. Acadiana groups work to feed hungry during coronavirus shutdown as shoppers stockpile goods. This is by Katie Gagliano, who's a staff writer. Empty store shelves and panic buying have been, Katie Gagliano, staff writer for The Advocate. Empty store shelves and panic buying have been a constant theme since the coronavirus pandemic began to overtake the United States. But thousands of Louisiana residents are incapable of stockpiling food, and a patchwork of local groups and supporters are working to feed those in need around Acadiana. According to Feeding America, the parent network of the Second Harvest Food Bank, over 770,000 Louisiana residents struggle with hunger. Advocates are concerned that number will rise as unemployment skyrockets while businesses are shuttered during the state's coronavirus shutdown. The Louisiana Workforce Commission announced Friday that there were 72,438 new unemployment insurance claims for the week ending March 21st, compared to 1,698 first-time claims during the week ending March 7th. Natalie J. Rowe, president of Second Harvest Food Bank, said they're looking to the unemployment numbers for planning guidance as they work to source food amid increased competition, strained supply lines, and declining retail donations. J. Rowe said the nonprofit relies on grocery store donations for about 1/3 of the 35 million pounds of food they distribute each year. Those donations have fallen off dramatically as in-store demand rises, especially for shelf-stable foods and similar items that make good donations, she said. The food bank is looking for alternate means of securing stock, including using monetary donations to purchase needed items from suppliers. But that's also a difficult proposition because they're competing with grocery chains and others for limited goods. We think the stress on the food supply is going to last for the next 8 weeks at least. We're just getting into the height of this situation, J. Rowe said. The organization operates in 23 parishes in South Louisiana with branches in Lafayette and New Orleans. The group serves about 3 million pounds of food per month. She estimated to around 210,000 people across the group's entire service area. About 80,000 of those individuals are in the Acadiana and Lake Charles areas, J. Rowe said. They're expecting to see increased requests for the service soon and have already seen bumps following the closure of K-12 schools in the state. Many students rely on school breakfast and lunch for their primary nutrition, and not all school sites are serving meals during the closure, she said. J. Rowe estimated Thursday the Lafayette Second Harvest warehouse had only a week to 2 weeks worth of non-U.S. Department of Agriculture food left. The USDA food is provided through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP, and distribution is restricted to individuals who've registered and attested to their need because of crisis. Of the roughly 500,000 pounds of food in the warehouse, about 400,000 pounds came from the USDA, she said. Second Harvest, Louisiana's congressional delegation, and Orleans Parish officials struggled with the federal organization last week, pushing the USDA to issue waivers to clear the red tape and allow the organization to release the food to meet critical needs without collecting forms for everyone. Approval came late Friday, J. Rowe said in a Saturday evening phone interview. It's hugely important, she said. This makes all the difference. Shannon Broussard, director of the Cajun Area Agency on Aging, said volunteers in their 8-parish region have been steadfast in helping to feed the roughly 2,200 seniors the agency supports with meals and other services. Of those recipients, about 1,800 seniors are homebound and rely on the organization's Meals on Wheels program as the primary source of nutrition. For some of them, this is their one hot meal per day, she said. Councils on Aging have been able to continue meal delivery as an essential service. The Cajun Area on Aging contracts with Bateman Community Living in Lafayette to produce the hot meals in bulk, and pans of food are transported to central meal sites in each parish, she said. The food is plated at the sites and taken on delivery routes, where drivers wear masks, change gloves each stop, and deliver the meals with little interaction for safety, Broussard said. The agency already observes strict sanitation guidelines for all food tools and utensils, so not much has been adjusted there, she said. The agency had to cancel all congregant meal gatherings for the foreseeable future, but provided each attendee a box of 10 days' worth of shelf-stable meals to feed the seniors until the end of the month, when the agency will reevaluate needs. They're also considering delivering shelf-stable meal boxes to homebound seniors to further protect volunteers and clients, she said. With the seniors' social interaction limited, Broussard said the agency is stepping up its telephone reassurance program and completing more wellness checks to both ensure their clients' health and provide them a social outlet. We tend to serve people who are socially and economically needy, Broussard said. The social need is a big component. If you don't have anyone to interact with, you're by yourself constantly, and it's easy to become isolated. While Second Harvest of Acadiana and the Cajun Area Agency on Aging are trying to meet immediate needs, they are also assessing the long-term needs of the region with other partner groups and Acadiana voluntary organizations active in disaster. Elsa Dimitriadis, a spokesperson for Acadiana VOAD, said the group has established 3 subcommittees assessing supply lines and available goods on store shelves, how to partner with restaurants to benefit the hungry and businesses, and safe donation collection and distribution. The first committee has secured permission from a growing list of area businesses for member organizations to participate in early bird shopping hours to secure needed items like shelf-stable foods for individuals in need who can't stock up on groceries or other items, she said. The problem facing families because of the pandemic are multifaceted, and food security is one piece, Dimitriadis said. Acadiana VOAD is assessing the needs through partner organizations and a loose coalition of area religious leaders who are helping poll their members and educate the community about resources. They're also turning to 232 HELP, also known as Louisiana 211, to map geographic hotspots for food, housing, and other stability needs based on requests they received, Dimitriadis said. Long after the virus has passed, we're going to see economic effects. This is the tipping point for a lot of families who are just making ends meet and aren't going to be able to. We need to be honest from the beginning about immediate response, but also about all of the phases of support that this emergency is going to require, she said. I do think it's going to be a long time before we're able to look back and see the full scope, Demetriadis said. Demetriadis said around 100 nonprofits, faith organizations, local elected officials, and state officials coordinate emergency response on an hour-long phone call each morning. The aim is to avoid duplicating work and allowing organizations to focus on their specialty rather than spreading themselves too thin trying to meet all needs, she said. The coronavirus response is unlike any disaster the association has responded to in the past, Demetriadis said. The member groups are relying heavily on technology, including conference calls, video software like Zoom, and a shared Google Drive to meet in place of roundtables and in-person community organizing. The physically distant approach is foreign, especially in South Louisiana, but it's necessary to avoid contributing to community spread and exacerbating the problem, she said. The physically distant approach applies to service at this phase also. Demetriadis said while Acadiana VOAD member organizations are accepting donations and volunteers, the group as a whole is still solidifying its collective plan and will be announcing where to donate and how to safely volunteer soon. Right now, the greatest act of service is staying home when possible, she said. There's been an enthusiasm that we've had to refocus because people are used to saying, people need food, let me make 400 barbecue sandwiches, and hand them out. And we cannot respond that way right now. We're so good at taking care of each other in Acadiana, especially during a crisis, but right now what we need to do is talk through it and figure this out in a slower, more thoughtful way, Demetriadis said. All right. Thank you, The Advocate, for all your news coverage. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Again, this is a public service of AOC Community Media. This is your daily news read so that we can get the news out to more people. The great reporting of The Advocate over at theadvocate.com /Acadiana if you're in the Acadiana area, but they also cover a lot of Louisiana. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to take a little sip of my coffee. I hope you're enjoying the sounds of my backyard studio this morning as well. The birds and crickets, and looks like maybe some coming showers, but we'll see. I saw there was a 50% chance a little earlier when I checked the forecast. All right, just a sip of coffee here. That's good. All right, our next story. I guess actually, I'm reminded to give a little shout out to Bruce Cohen, one of our news volunteers. He and I were able to connect over Hangout meeting on Friday, and I think we were able to get his computer set up. So those of you who are missing Bruce, you're going to hear him coming back to read the news from his home studio. Fingers crossed, because, technology is wild. I believe Wednesday and Thursday are his regular days, and I think he said he will be up for doing some news this Wednesday or Thursday. So it's good. It was good to hear from him. Good to hear he's doing good, doing well, and we thank him for all of his volunteer service, but especially right now as working with us to provide, remote volunteer service. All right, so our next story is severance tax changes might help industry survive, supporter says. This is by Ken Stickney, a staff writer for The Advocate. The state's oil and gas industry, long the engine that drives Louisiana's economy, is sputtering under the weight of a global oil gut and plummeting commodity prices. U.S. Representative Clay Higgins, Republican Lafayette, said he's written to Governor John Bel Edwards to ask him to lighten the burden on oil and gas producers, which employ some 36,000 people in Louisiana and affiliated companies, which generate some 260,000 jobs, direct and indirect, in state. By reducing or suspending the state's 12.5% severance tax. By doing this, you will ensure that one of the biggest employers, direct and indirect, of Louisiana citizens is able to continue offering services to our state and nation, Higgins wrote in this letter, released this week. This will also allow hundreds of thousands of Louisiana citizens to continue receiving paychecks and benefits, which will allow the federal government and state additional leeway to prioritize our resources. In his letter, Higgins cited two recent developments that have driven prices and profits down. The global price war for oil launched by Saudi Arabia and Russia, major producers, and the coronavirus pandemic, which has suppressed global demand for energy. The West Texas intermediate price of oil was below $22 a barrel Friday morning, down from $62.48 a barrel 6 months ago. The effects of those two developments placed energy jobs in Louisiana and the nation in a particularly precarious state, Higgins wrote. Suspending or trimming the state's severance tax would help oil and gas companies in keeping their payrolls intact. The second-term congressman, a Republican, said the governor, a Democrat, had not responded to him by Thursday, other than to acknowledge the receipt of his letter. That, he said, has never happened before. In a telephone interview, Higgins, who is set to return to Washington, D.C. on Friday morning, said he's aware that the severance tax decision belongs to Edwards alone, in that the severance tax is a state issue. Severance tax collection reaped $525 million for the state budget in fiscal year 2019, money that would be hard to replace. But with production and prices down, Higgins said collections were going to be substantially diminished as well. Suspending or cutting severance tax collections, he said, would give at least some relief to oil and gas producers and would send a message to investors that Louisiana business climate was more welcoming by comparison, Higgins said. Texas collects a severance tax of only 4.6%. While Higgins is a federal lawmaker, the severance tax hasn't escaped the notice of state lawmakers. 5 filed bills pertain to the severance tax, including one by State Rep. Philip R. DeVilliers, Republican Eunice, that would reduce the tax impact on low-producing wells. More bills may be filed Tuesday. Gifford Briggs, president of the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, said that LOGA has surveyed members about their needs as the 2020 legislative session resumes next week. The session opened March 9th, but was suspended 2 weeks because of the coronavirus. A large majority of wells will be shut at these prices, he said. They won't be brought into production again. He said producers need severance tax help soon, as oil prices have dropped 60% since January. State support through suspending or cutting severance taxes would help to keep wells producing, Briggs said he has received a copy of Higgins' letter. He said LOGA has had conversations with the state's federal delegation as well as its state lawmakers. He said LOGA has not approached Edwards yet because he knows the governor is hard-pressed to keep up with the pandemic. He also said there is no time for partisanship. All state officials must be working to help the state's people and its business community survive. Hopefully, the governor will champion the needs of small and medium-sized producers, he said. And you can email Ken Stickney at kstickney@theadvocate.com. All right, you guys, and unfortunately, I'm going to pause for just a second. I have to take care of a tech issue real quick, but I will be right back. In the meantime, I'm going to play a little bit more music from Dig CC Mixter. So just bear with me. I'm going to pipe that music in, and I will be back in just a second. Everybody, I just made it back. Sorry about that interruption to your news, but luckily you got to listen to a little bit of Triptych of Snippets by Septa Helix, and also thanks to Recreation Airtone. Blue Sky Blues by Kara Square, and Renovation by Airtone. All that, again, found at Dig CC Mixter, which is a place where you can find attribution licensed music for your non-commercial or commercial projects. All right, so let us get back now to the news this morning. All right, we just read a story by Ken Stickney, and up next we are going to read more downtown living. Vermilion Lofts to build second phase with at least 40 units. This story is by Adam Daigle, Acadiana business editor. What's your home's walk score? That is how accessible is where you live to the amenities you need without having to get into your car and drive. It's a trend in real estate, and one that architect Stephen Ortego and other investors behind the 24-unit Vermilion Lofts like about their location in downtown Lafayette. So much so that they are planning a second phase of the development across the street, a $7 to $8 million project that will feature 4 or 5 levels, at least 40 units, and 8,500 square feet of commercial space after purchasing 2 adjoining lots last year. And Vermilion Lofts walk score? At walkscore.com, it gets a 90, earning the title of a walker's paradise. I think when I was a kid, people in real estate would always look at the school district, Ortego said. Now that school choices are such a big thing, now people can look at other things. I'm seeing a trend of people looking at walk scores, walkability, to just day-to-day stuff such as restaurants, cafes, convenience stores. The development's first phase, which was ready for tenants just before COVID-19 arrived in Louisiana, is a 5-minute walk to those amenities downtown and is the first residential development ready for tenants among the 202 residential units planned so far. Ortego's group that brought the former space of the Lafayette Parish School Board's tax office at 411 East Vermilion, an L-shaped lot that connects to Clinton Street, and the adjoining lot at 413 East Vermilion Street. It's part of building a neighborhood of sorts in that area, he said, which serves as somewhat of a connector between downtown and Freetown across Johnson Street. Johnson is a high-traffic area, but you also have a lot of bike and foot traffic from Freetown, he said. One building is great, but we made a conscious effort to focus on a second project nearby. We decided we wanted to start scaling up on it and see if that helps overcome any challenges we see from the first one. The second phase will feature a number of studio apartments and has gotten a significant amount of demand in the current building and could feature some condominiums. The current building has also drawn interest from professionals of varying ages who live outside of Lafayette but need a place to stay when they visit, he said. The development is the first to announce downtown after the announcement of CGI opening its second office in the Versailles building on the edge of downtown. Already, the place where an estimated 7,000 people report for work downtown will get 300 more employees when CGI opens next year. Other residential projects, including the 30-unit Buchanan Heights townhomes at 305 West 2nd Street and the 68 units planned for the old federal courthouse with its 68 units, remain under construction. CGI's employees would be Vermilion Loft's target market, Ortego said. More employees downtown would mean more demand for downtown housing. We haven't seen much change downtown until now, said Jim Keaty, owner of Keaty Real Estate. Stevens' property will be a catalyst for more people downtown, which in turn will create more business for downtown business owners and more activity on a weeknight. We need more residents. All right, and our next story is, this is actually on NOLA.com, but sent to us by the Advocate. Texas to require Louisiana residents driving through to quarantine due to coronavirus. This report is by Orlando Flores Jr., who's a staff writer. Texas is doubling down on its travel restrictions for Louisiana residents entering the state as positive coronavirus cases continue to climb in both states, according to a report from the San Antonio Express News. On Sunday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order restricting all travel into Texas from anywhere in Louisiana. Previously, Abbott placed a restriction on only air travel from New Orleans. The epicenter for most of Louisiana is 3,540 positive cases of coronavirus. Uh, Travel by road. This is a tweet from Bob Garrett at Robert T. Garrett on Twitter. Travel by road from any location in the state of Louisiana into Texas will require a 14-day self-quarantine, just like the earlier order for air travelers from New Orleans, Governor Abbott says. Some exceptions for military, first responders, et al., he says. Okay. Motorists that cross the state line, continuing in the story, will be ordered to self-quarantine for 14 days after arriving or until their time in the state ends, the report says. State troopers will enforce the order at road checkpoints along the Texas-Louisiana border. Exemptions will be made for drivers with commercial, medical, military, or critical infrastructures purposes. The order follows a similar exemption made by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Friday. DeSantis said he expanded his order after officials worried that people would flee New Orleans for Florida as positive coronavirus test numbers climb there. Officials in Mississippi, specifically in Bay St. Louis and other areas along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, where many Louisianians have vacation homes or condos, have shared the same concern. Texas is reporting more than 2,500 coronavirus cases across the state, with at least one case in nearly half of its 254 countries, according to the Texas Tribune. Abbott's executive order also expands the previous air travel restriction to include passengers arriving from the following cities: Miami, Detroit, Atlanta, and Chicago. And you can read the San Antonio Express News full report at expressnews.com. Our next story: signs point to dedication, courage, heroes work here. And this is about a sign, heroes work here, in front of Lafayette Surgical Specialty Hospital on Friday. This story is by Ken Stickney of The Advocate. Acadiana healthcare professionals have gotten high praise from a source that knows them well: the College of Nursing and Allied Health Professionals at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, from where many of them graduated. Dr. Melinda Overleitner, college dean, said she saw a similar campaign underway in the Terrebonne Parish and decided nurses and other healthcare professionals here also should be lauded for their work during the coronavirus pandemic that imperils Louisiana. She ordered large signs to be erected at area healthcare facilities in 2 shifts this week. Initially, they were placed at Lafayette General, Our Lady of Lourdes, Women's and Children's Hospital, and University Health and Clinics. Later, the signs were displayed at Opelousas General, Iberia Medical Center, the Lafayette Surgical Specialty Hospital, and the Heart Hospital of Lafayette. The sign displays read, "Heroes work here, and thanks to our healthcare professionals." And I'll just make an editorial note: I second that. Thank you, healthcare professionals. Back to the story. Healthcare workers don't have the luxury of working remotely right now. They have to leave their families to help seriously ill people, Oberleitner said. They deserve an immense amount of respect and praise for that. She noted that the World Health Organization designated this year as the Year of the Nurse and Midwife, which honors the 200th anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale, a pioneer of nursing in Great Britain. Oberleitner, a St. Martin native educated at UL Lafayette, said response to the signs has been enthusiastic at some locations. Nurses and other healthcare professionals have had photos taken by the signs. She has taught at the campus for some 4 decades. Many of the healthcare professionals excelling at area healthcare facilities studied under her direction or during her administration. We're getting a lot of response from alumni, she said, adding that the signs have boosted morale for healthcare workers at the sites. She said nurses and others at the healthcare facilities are weathering historic challenges in healthcare. I went through the era of age, she said, of her own career, but this is so much different. She compared it to tending to patients during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, which she said was probably the closest thing we've experienced on a global scale. And I'd just like to second that whole sentiment. Thank your healthcare professionals. Thanks to the families of healthcare professionals. And thanks to everybody who is, out there providing essential services, and everybody else who is not, who is staying away, staying home, staying self-isolated and social distancing. Thanks to all of you for doing that, helping to flatten the curve. And that is my editorial note. I'm Matt Roberts at AOC Community Media. All right, Louisiana's largest employer. This is our next story. Louisiana's largest employer, state government, struggles to keep working through coronavirus. This is by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor. Since the start of March, the novel coronavirus has forced the shutdown of hundreds of companies, which have laid off thousands of their workers as businesses dried up. But Louisiana's largest employer, the state government, is staying open, and its 64,580 employees will continue to receive paychecks. Partly that decision was made to keep at least some people in the market with money to spend, and partly because unemployment has made a staggering jump. We don't see any reason to add to the unemployment rolls, Commissioner of Administration Jay Dardeen told The Advocate. Applications for unemployment relief has jumped to 72,260 from the weekly average of about 3,600. Public employees are the largest segment of the workforce in Baton Rouge by far, as well as in New Orleans and Lafayette. Even in many of the sparsely populated rural parishes where unemployment before the pandemic routinely was in the double figures, the state accounts for most of the jobs. Mostly, however, the state wants to keep in place the people on whom so many will rely once the pandemic crisis subsides, Dardeen said. State offices are closed to the public, but state business continues. Governor John Bel Edwards announced March 22nd as he directed dozens of non-essential businesses, from zoos to beauty salons, to close. Accomplishing that goal has been somewhat of a strain. Some state workers need to stay on the job, law enforcement and prison guards, for instance. But a lot of the forms and applications can be done online or over the phone. One of the first hurdles was to distribute enough laptops for thousands of employees to work from home. Also, the state's computer server couldn't initially handle all that remote access. Last week, technicians upgraded to the system to handle 65,000 remote users simultaneously. Several thousand more laptops are expected to arrive this week. It has been challenging, Dardeen said. It doesn't rise to the level of frustrating in comparison to all the other things we've had to do on the fly. But to put that all together in the context of existing rules and policies we have is different in the best of times. The heads of various state agencies were tasked to figure out who on their staff could work remotely and who would have to stagger their in-office shifts in order to practice the social distancing necessary to prevent further spread of COVID-19. And the managers had to do this while complying with the immense tangle of regulations, laws, and policies enacted over the years to ensure that caches of the workforce didn't become personal fiefdoms of politicians, and that the public money going to state employees was spent prudently. Someone without symptoms but required to self-quarantine requires one accountability code to get paid. Someone assigned to office work but wanting to care for children at home requires a different code. The State Civil Service Commission held an emergency meeting March 18th to develop rules on how best to handle the various scenarios expected and assign each different code using compensatory time, annual leave, and sick leave to continue paying employees given their individual circumstances. For instance, the Office of Civil Service has 100 employees, 89 of whom teleworked last week. Those remote employees were coded as working. But Civil Service had to shutter its Baton Rouge Testing and Recruiting Center, a central office where job applicants gather to fill out forms and take necessary tests. The 5 employees who worked there were coded office closure, which kept regular salaries coming without dipping into paid vacation time. 5 other employees were deemed non-essential and were unable to telework. They were coded as special leave act of God. The Division of Administration has been trying to get a handle on how the state workforce is deployed, but has run into difficulties because of the numbers change daily and not all of the agencies are reporting. Still, from what numbers the agency could accumulate, it looks like a little more than half, 11,050 of 21,504 Our employees were working remotely as of yesterday, so that's roughly half. Um, all 212 employees at the Department of Insurance worked remotely, as did the 59 of the 74 staffers in the governor's office, according to the division's incomplete census. Treasurer John Schroeder rearranged his 76 employees to shift employees who couldn't perform their regular duties remotely to assist processing unclaimed property claims. 96 of the 447 employees at the Secretary of State's office worked from home, but with elections slated for June and July, some work must be done in the office, and those staffers rotated in as needed. Those at home who are not working used compensatory time, annual leave, or sick leave as applicable. Museum employees were granted special leave and are not working from home. The Department of Agriculture and Forestry, with 589 employees, has many field offices scattered around the state, which makes in-office social distancing easier. About 397 employees work from home. Attorney General Jeff Landry issued a legal opinion endorsing the legality of paying public employees unable to work because of office closings sparked by the coronavirus. Were those public entities to cease compensating their employees, presumably a greater number of those employees who were not paid will be unavailable when the government operations are resumed at the end of the declaration. Landry's legal opinion says, foreseeably, some public entities could potentially see drastic reductions in staff and subsequently services to its citizens were this to occur. This is such a moving dynamic, Dardine said. We're attempting to strike an appropriate balance to protect employees and the public while providing necessary services and have an ability to ramp back up when this crisis is over. All right. Looks like we got about 10 minutes left. I got a few more stories here. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. This is the Daily News Read, a partnership between The Advocate, our newspaper, The Advocate, and AOC Community Media. My name is Matt Roberts, and I'm going to keep reading. Let's read a story. This is by Dan Boudreau, a staff writer, and the headline is, I'm freaking out, self-employed freelance workers feeling the effects of coronavirus lockdown. The bills are coming due for Nicole David and her downtown hair salon, Monrev Salon, while business has slowed significantly during the coronavirus pandemic. David, who is considered, or David, sorry if I'm mispronouncing, who is considered a 1099 employee by the government along with contract workers, initially wouldn't qualify for unemployment benefits to help get through. But the federal stimulus bill approved late Friday expanded unemployment benefits to include part-time employees, freelancers, and independent contractors, gig workers, and the self-employed, reports indicate. Until relief comes, David is searching for loans or any other forms or revenue to get by, since demand for her work and the work of her fellow hairdressers disappeared almost overnight. She had to close salon on March 18th, ahead of Governor John Bel Edwards' mandate this week for all salons and barbershops to close on Monday. I'm freaking out, she says this week. I'm calling my credit card companies and my mortgage company to see if they'll defer payments until we're back up and running again. Even though I own my own business, sometimes I make just as much as my employees. Why do I get hindered and hurt when I'm working and also supplying jobs? So-called 1099 workers are essentially their own boss and can also hire on other 1099s to help work jobs or even hire them on as employees as well. Contract workers are a significant part of the economy, according to Upwork, and was a source of revenue for 57 million people in the United States last year. Stay-in-place mandates and other closures have either shut down those contract workers or forced them to hustle and to find income. Corey Champagne, owner of Acadian Slice Pies, moved his business from selling pies at farmers markets and in local stores to taking orders via Facebook, text, and email, payment through online processors, and delivery in his own vehicle. Right now, I'm a solo owner and operator, so I didn't have to lay off employees, but the biggest hit for me was the canceling of the farmers markets, festivals, and other venues we would sell at, Champagne said. I'm keeping things super clean and cooking everything myself, then delivering it to customers as a quick and safe turnaround as possible. In Opelousas, computer repairman Damon Fontenot said he is keeping contacts with customers to only text messages and phone calls. He's using gloves and rubbing alcohol to sanitize the equipment. The only time he is interacting with customers is at pickup or drop-off. Business lately has picked up, he said. Now that everyone is sequestered at home, it's easy to see why I'm getting more work, Fontenot said. Computers are how people communicate, work, and find their entertainment. People need computers now more than ever. In addition to extending the coverage to gig workers and independent contractors, the stimulus package adds $600 per week to normal state benefits for up to 4 months and provides an additional 13 weeks of benefits to 39 weeks of regular unemployment insurance through the end of 2020 for workers who were sidelined by the outbreak. The coverage would be retroactive to January 27th. All right. Let's see. Let's see if I can find, I know the horoscopes and obituaries are favorites of listeners, so let me just see if I can find those right now. Sorry, I didn't pull them up earlier. I was kind of scrambling to get the news all collected so that it would read here. But again, you can go to theadvocate.com and find it. Find those things, I'm sure. While on your computer, I am looking to see if I can find those. You've been listening to a public service of Acadiana Open Channel, or AOC Community Media, excuse me, formerly Acadiana Open Channel. We still have Acadiana Open Channels on TV, Cox AOC 1 and 2. On both Cox and LUS cable systems. All right, I am not, I never really look at the horoscope myself. I only have ever read it when people have printed it out, and I don't really look at the obituaries either. So I'm going to give this just, okay, let's see. Obituaries in Acadiana. All right, so this week, 19 total. I think that's, is that Acadiana? I apologize about this, y'all. Again, I'm trying to see if I can find the Acadiana specific obituaries. Okay. So this week, maybe. No, it looks like the obituaries are not going to load up for me. I apologize about that, y'all. Let me do one more check on the, I'm sure tomorrow morning, someone who is more knowledgeable at that, or somebody with a paper, not a digital paper like me, will be able to give you the obits. And it looks like the horoscope. So we're going to miss both of those this morning. I'm going to end early and stream a little more music from our Dig CC mixer. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the daily news read. Again, community service of AOC Community Media and theadvocate.com. You can head over to theadvocate.com and you can support them. You can get a subscription or you can support a journalist in other ways. As we thank them for their service. Thanks to healthcare professionals. Do keep an eye out for ways that you can help others who may be having a hard time through this shutdown. There's, as we heard today in the news, there's a lot of workers who cannot go to work because they're doing their part to help keep us all a little safer and hopefully flatten that curve again in Louisiana. So if there's ways that you can help them, local artists, bartenders, servers, restaurant owners, I know a lot of them are still serving, so if you feel comfortable with it, order some food. I'm sure they're taking extra precautions. You take extra precautions too, keep everybody safe. Thank the people who are serving your groceries, the people who are delivering, everybody who is working through this thing. keeping things as normal as they can possibly be in this weird situation. If you've got anything to share with your community, if maybe a message of hope, a message of thanks, letting people know what's going on in your life as you're going through this, I want to remind you that AOC Community Media, we're here just for that. Normally, we would be offering you, direct tools and in-person training. What we can offer now is definitely remote training and help with remote tools, but almost everybody has a little connection to the internet in their pocket these days with cell phones. A lot of those cell phones have cameras. Some of them may only have voice recording capabilities, but if they have that too, or if you don't have any of those options and you want to talk about other options, ways that you might be able to share how you're feeling, go over to aocinc.org, or email one of us at email all of us, I should say, at info@aocinc.org, and we'll be glad to help you in whatever way is safe and reasonable to communicate your message, including, like I was talking about earlier, one of our volunteer newsreaders has a computer at home. We worked on Friday on getting him set up with that open broadcast software, OBS, so that he can read the news right from the comfort of his own home office. He doesn't have to venture out into the world. He can obey the stay-at-home order and keep everybody safe and flattening the curve, and still provide a community service. And I think he might be ready to have a little fun. Thanks everybody again for tuning in. I'm Matt Roberts. This is AOC Community Media in partnership with The Advocate, and I hope you all have a good, safe day. Thank you.